Good evening and welcome to Story Hour. I'm tonight's host, Laura Blackwell. My co-host, the marvelous Daniel Marcus, started Story Hour pretty close to 6 years ago now, just to let people get together during the week and share stories. And, it's made Wednesdays livable for quite a while now. We just keep coming back. Welcome to those of you who are back with us, returning, and welcome to those of you joining us for the first time. As always, we have two fantastic writers of the fantastic. These two go a little more toward the weird and spooky, although they themselves aren't that weird and spooky. Shh. Tonight's readers are Rhiannon Rasmussen and Loren Rhoads. If you're here on Zoom, feel free to chime in on the text chat. Sometimes things get lively. If you are joining us on YouTube, enjoy the show without any pressures of, social expectation. Although it is awfully nice to leave a comment for the writers when you like their stories. It makes them very happy. So with that in hand, let's meet Rhiannon Rasmussen. Rhiannon Rasmussen is an author and illustrator of dark, speculative works, not all of which include exoskeletons. Rhiannon's fiction has appeared in venues including Lightspeed magazine, Diabolical Plots, as Magic the Gathering official web shorts. Now that sounds like a lot of fun. And most recently in debut collection, The Maidens of Midnight and Other Lost Media from Dim Shores Publishing. Visit rhiannonrs.com or Charybdis with the I before the Y in the spelling on Blue Sky for more. Rhiannon, welcome.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
We are happy to have you. Now, I have to ask, I know Maidens of Midnight is a limited edition. Are there still any copies left?
Yeah, there's about 30 copies left on the Dim Shores website. So
Okay.
definitely check it out if you're interested.
Not bad. Not bad a bit. So what do you have for us tonight?
I will be reading The Lives of Scavengers, which was originally published in the wonderful trans charity anthology, Your Body Is Not Your Body.
Oh, the one from Tenebris Press.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah,
Excellent.
great anthology, wonderful lineup. Very spooky, visceral horror.
Nice. Well, I've got my blanket and I'm ready to hear.
All right. The Lives of Scavengers. I was born from your grave into this sunless world. I clawed my way out of cold earth with curled hands, my mouth filled with worms and my nails stained petrichor. The rot was the warmth left behind me. For a long time, this was what I knew there was of life. I ate the worms and chewed the bones to strengthen my jaws, and I drank the dew which pooled on the stone of the funeral yards. Whether it was a good life or bad did not concern me. When others came to my graveyard, I lurked behind the stones and studied them. I dared not approach, and in a similar manner, those who saw me looked away. I understood that they were afraid. Mistakenly, I assumed it was of me. Now I understand they averted their eyes to avert their shame. That which is not acknowledged is no one's responsibility. This was the way of the Undercity, ignored by the city above. The first time someone met my eyes, it was a person dressed in the plump rose of a worm's belly. The long hair of her head hung limp like mine, though it was tucked into a lace veil. Later, I learned rose was the color of mourning, of woman's mourning. Men mourned in other colors. The woman met my eyes through her veil. Her expression did not change. She did not look away. I fled, back to my hole of worms and dew. To have been seen frightened me. The next candle's mark, she returned with rinds of bread and cheese. She sat with the food next to her until I approached and snatched the food away. The texture was more pleasant to chew than the bursting worms. It became our routine over the course of several days. She came to my yard with bread and patience until I came so close as to sit with her. As I chewed, she spoke. I am called Voyery, she said. I am a widow, so time is of no import to me. I have more of it than I please. My mouth full, I did not answer. Do you know from whence you came? I swallowed. Here. Behind her veil, her black eyes caught the lantern light. Ah, I heard the grave children were born with speech, but the spheres have not moved to grant us any in decades. That is how you were left ignored. A shame, but Voyery is here for you. This meant nothing to me. I took more of the cheese rind. I enjoyed the chew between my molars. Do you know how you came to be? She asked. Of the spheres and the saints? No, I said. She told me of the three saints of decay who governed the paths of those such as me, the vulture, the hyena, the scarab. All were important, she said. Only one was to be feared. She looked at my teeth, and she told me which sphere I was governed by. I snapped my teeth together. Do you fear me? I asked. No, she said, and I could tell she spoke the truth in her kind words. She was not afraid, though she always wore the veil. Even the dim throbbing of lanterns was difficult for her eyes. She returned daily for a fortnight. At the end of that passage, when she saw how close I now dared sit near her, she asked me if I wished to learn what life was without dirt as a second skin. That was the manner in which I, the grave child, became instead the widow Voyery's child. The name she bestowed upon me was Make, heir of misfortune. I was proud, but jealous when I learned that I was not the first of her children, nor the only stray. One such son, Ivan, the eldest, came to her house often and fixed what was broken. Her bench, her pantry shelf, her bathing bucket. I did not like him. He did not like me. He mocked my name. I sat in the corner when he visited and bared my teeth at him. He bared his teeth back, and Voyery laughed and said we were alike. She spoke proudly of his accomplishments. A night watch in the darkest gloom, a handyman. He stood against the dark and did not flinch even in the hour when the veins of the city above flowed too thick and the city's blood dripped down to the streets of our lightless slum, she said. Brave and clever. Not clever enough to stand in the cover and keep his night hat unstained, I thought. And what he fixed was not fixed long. The bench slouched, the pantry moldered, the bucket leaked. He left with her change, her bread, her gratitude, more than the worth of a bench a bucket could well serve as. Of his own earnings he did not give, though he bragged often before her, and she was proud. He asked for her last savings in the rose-colored bag she tucked into the back of the cabinets, and she laughed at that too. But who was I to note such things? I had come from dirt. I knew only how to break, not to mend. About this, Voyery was patient and kind. She had time, she told me. She had nothing to give but time. Voyery was poor, but to me, our meager food was a feast. She was not much learned, but to my ears, her scraps of knowledge were all-encompassing. I learned quickly. Among the lessons I learned was that what she had to give was not enough for me. The hunger of the grave, the redness of my belly, and the hunger of my saint grew and gnawed at me, and I became hollow with it. My motions were rote, and my teeth were razors. I tried to be gentle, but in my hands, pots and buckets warped or shattered. I wished to be content, but I was not. She knew, and it hurt us both. She often was short with me. Her patience was not drawn from such a deep well as time. I watched Voyery closely even when we argued, to learn from her. Her kindness, to me, seemed weak, a concession of territory. When she shouted, I knew she was treating me as an equal, and I tried to repair and repay and show her the patience that she had shown me. When she spoke softly and called in Ivan to mend what I had destroyed, I knew she was giving in, and to see him speak softly to her and smile pityingly at me and leave with whatever his eyes fell on enraged me. I left her house when she treated me as such, knowing and hating that she often turned to Ivan in my absence. What I turned to in her absence was the grave. Your grave I could find by scent alone, and it was gouged with words. I sat by it in silence and anger I could not put full thoughts to. Neither the widow nor I knew letters, so I did not puzzle out your name. Perhaps this was better. An image can be admired wholly. To know a man wholly is to know betrayal. Here I will not mince. What followed was not the fault of Voyery. None could have provided enough for me. Her only fault was trust. In that afternoon, my hunger overcame me, and in hollow-bellied anger, I threw the crooked bench into the pantry shelf to break both of their emptiness. Voyery cried. I left when she spoke of Ivan. Ivan who helped and did not hurt her, unlike her troubled child. I paced in the graveyard among my kin, the rot and the bones, and I touched the stones, and I considered my anger. I was troubled, yes. My efforts were my best, and my best was poor. I understood that I was not a sufficient child. But I did not lie, I did not take, I did not understand why she saw no difference between myself and my hunger, and Ivan and his greed. After a day alone, I returned, and the bench was fixed, and the pantry bare. Voyery bade me search for her savings in their rose-colored bag. Her eyesight was poor. She had misplaced the money. We overturned the house. The money still was not found. With disgust, I said Ivan had taken it. His eyes had fallen on it many times. She said Ivan had not, and condemned me for speaking ill of my brother, though he was no brother of mine. I went searching for him. I had not gone much into the city, but I knew Ivan's name. I knew what he spoke of, and overnight I found him intoxicated, hot-faced and penniless, draped in a broken chair in the filthy back room of a smoky building. I swore at him and cursed his name and demanded what he had stolen. What will a grave child and a hag do with money? He mocked, and clapped his hands, while the friends his mother's stolen money had bought him laughed. Buy needles and leeches? Why not give, gamble, enjoy a little life in this sorry hole? Not that he called it a hole, or myself what I was, but that he called Voyery a hag. I had no use for words. I lunged and clawed and bit him, and from his jacket, while he shouted and beat at me, I wrestled the rose-colored bag the coins had been in. I could not conceive of losing that sum, but he had spent it with frivolity on cards and spinning tops. Later, I would learn it was a sum easy to lose, but to Voyery and I, it had been the wealth of the world. Ivan's friends of convenience threw me onto the street. Ivan laughed with drunken bluster and crowed his victory as I retreated. I returned, bruised, to Voyery with the empty bag. She blamed me. I wailed, I shrieked. I offered to work. None would have me. I offered to steal. Voyery shouted that stolen coin would curse us both. Had it cursed Ivan? I asked. He seemed well. He brought us dry rinds and spotted cheese. How kind! No food became less. My hollowness turned inside out. I chewed the furniture to fill myself with splinters. I begged on the street. Voyery did the odd jobs she could hold for old food from the city above. Our efforts were not enough. The food was hard on her. The work gave her pain. I dug and ate worms from the street and watched Voyery grow slower, much too quickly. Ivan came smugly by with old bread and offered to take the house from Voyery. She could not take care of it, nor of him, or of me. This was true. I asked him to take her in, without me. She cried. As though I had never bit him, he smiled kindly and with pity and patted me on the head. On him, I smelled guilt. Unkempt grave child, he said. Of course I will care for my own mother. To her he spoke softly, and in that moment I saw the grace Voyery saw in him, and I was glad. Of course he would help his mother. Even a rotten man was moved by guilt. That I would be in the street, and Voyery with her son who returned for her. That was enough. I helped her gather things, some clothes, and Ivan said he would be back for the rest, her needles, her darning gourd, the profession that until now had at least fed her. He asked me to finish gathering them while he was gone. Yet some small seed of mistrust bade me trail them. They walked towards his house and past it towards the end of town, away from the graveyard and away from the shadow of the highest sphere, out of the sheltering wings of the Saint Ossifrage of the city above. Further they walked from the central sphere to the realm of the sphere below, the farmers' wetlands, where lived the forgotten, the marshes, the leeches, the mosquitoes, and the abandoned. Saint Scarab Beetle's sphere of shit, the beginning and the end of life. At the edge of a field slumped a moldering house. The poorhouse, stinking of mildew and rot. Our hut had been cleaner. Our hut had not been left to curl in upon itself. The walls did not mask the thin sound of sobs from my saint ears. There was no care in this place. It was where people were left to be buried without remembrance. Voyery knew. Voyery clapped her hand on her son's back and went through the fence willingly, as though this was her place. I followed them to the gate. I watched them embrace, and Ivan kissed her on each soft cheek. He promised to visit. He promised to bring her the last of her work. He promised not to forget her. In his gait as he turned away, I saw the lively spring of a man freed of a burden. I heard the laugh he made at the gambling table. I waited for him to turn the corner on the marsh road, out of sight of the windows of the poorhouse. And then I killed him. I killed him as a cat does. I was not kind. I felt my saint within me as I ate of his chest and belly, and I was filled. The remains I sunk into the marsh field so that he might have some use in death as he had not in life. In that moment, watching the body sink into the mud, I was satisfied, my hunger and my anger. It was a fleeting satisfaction. Voyery's spinning work I bundled and left at the gate of the poorhouse for her. Not long after, I heard she had died of her grief. Her work did not sustain her through the loss and through my betrayal, and I knew it was a betrayal, but that had not stopped me. The council of the city above would condemn us both, and from their council our blood would pass down to the grave in the hour of blood, but I bore no guilt. I returned to the graveyard, and I cleaned my hands, and I mourned there. I mourned, but I did not die. Ivan and Voyery both were gone, one before the other, though to me it felt they had parted the other way around. Their passings swallowed each other in my memory, one after the other, always, without closure. One I thought would bring me happiness, the other sorrow. But Ivan's passing brought me sorrow as well, and for a long time I lingered in it. I watched in the yard, and each in the color of rose, I searched for the manners of Voyery or the memory of Voyery. When at last I understood that I would not find her in another, I grew weary of mourning Voyery in every shadow. Their end was death, but not my death. Mosquito wives, ticks and leeches, death feeders who snap bones in their teeth, they came and went from my yard. So did I go, first in their paths, and then on my own to the city above. I traveled far. I passed through the Ossifrage's council of blood without guilt, and further still. My hunger never lessened. Whether I had done ill did not concern me, but when I could, I tried to do good, as had been done for me. And after many years of this, at last I understood what Voyery had meant when she told me she only had time to give. To her memory, I would offer gratitude. To her child, patience. To her body, rest, and the knowledge that the space she resided in was hers to have. Never should she have had to fold herself away. Through all of this, you, the body of whom I was born of, I never thought of you at all. The end.
I think I want to give that an eyeball read too.
Yeah.
I
Thank you.
want to spend some more time with that one. Wow, thank you.
Thank you for having me. This was a pleasure.
Our pleasure. It is our way at Story Hour to just take a minute between the two writers, well, a moment, needn't be a whole minute, to take in what we can from the first story and ready ourselves for the next one. And I like to do this with the breath. Everyone, that was Rhiannon Rasmussen's first reading for Story Hour. And next, we have an old friend of Story Hour who has not been back in far too long because I have very poor sense of time. So next we have up Loren Rhoads. Loren Rhoads is the author of almost 30 stories about Alondra de Corval. These stories have appeared in Best New Horror, Strange California, occult detective magazine, Weird Book, and in Loren's short story collection, Unsaved Words, and most recently in the anthology Black Cat Tales. Her newest book is a cemetery memoir. She's kind of a cemetery expert. Actually, she's totally a cemetery expert. And so her newest book is a cemetery memoir called Still Wish You Were Here, More Adventures in Cemetery Travel. Find out more about her work at lorenrhoads.com. And that's Rhoads like Randy Rhoads. Loren, welcome back.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
It is our pleasure.
Tough act to follow.
Oh, yeah, that was something, right? That's one of the reasons we have to do a breath, because, since we don't try to make the stories all matchy-matchy, we need a little transitions, a little transition time between the stories. But I bet you've got something for us that's a little bit spooky too.
I hope so. You'll have to let me know.
So.
I haven't read this one before, so this will be the first time.
Oh, that's exciting. And what's the title?
This is called Black as Shadow, Red as Blood, White as Bone.
Oh, lovely.
And I have a couple of trigger warnings. There is some very brief language, so if the kids are listening, maybe, it's over with quickly. There's an animal attack, and there is some off-screen animal death, so FYI. All right, and I'll begin. The zoo's parking lot was nearly empty when Alondra de Corval stepped out of her cab. She walked past the shuttered ticket window and paused at the unattended entry gate to allow a family of 5 to exit before her. The parents looked at her strangely, so Alondra wished them good evening. Evening, the father answered as the mother hustled the curious kids past. No one asked why Alondra was going in after closing time. She picked up a map from the entry kiosk and traced her path with a fingertip. As she wound her way through the zoo, long shadows chased away the last of the sunlight. An eerie roar echoed through the gathering dark, a shattering growl of power that was copied and amplified by the other big cats. An atavistic shiver rolled through Alondra's body. She paused to listen, breathing deeply, fighting the instinct to turn and flee. Since the accident several years earlier, the zoo had completed a highly advertised remodeling. No longer could visitors lean over the grottos to look down on the big cats. Now bulletproof glass separated all the predatory animals from the crowds. A peacock screamed in the night. The bird stepped into Alondra's path, shaking loose its magnificent tail. When Alondra didn't offer him food, he paraded onward into the shadows. Eventually, the twining path led Alondra to the big cat enclosures. She found a knot of keepers gathered on the terrace outside. One of the women, dressed in a zoo-branded jacket, stepped forward to greet her. I'm Dana Faison. Thank you for coming. Alondra smiled. That roaring is really impressive. Do they do that every night? Yes, it's one of the ways they bond. Everyone is checking in with each other as they settle in for the night. How much longer before the haunting begins? Dana winced, but checked her watch. It shouldn't be long now. The keepers ceased chatting. Alondra realized the lions had also fallen silent. The lion she could see crept on his elbows behind a boulder and hunkered down. As the last of the afterglow fled the sky, the temperature dropped and a chill wormed down her back. It was beginning. 4 partially transparent young men strolled out of the darkness, shouting and laughing and shoving each other. An animal roared like nothing she had heard so far. The hoarse vocalization skated down 5 tones, settling into a rumbling huff that Alondra could feel in her bones. The sound was so loud, so close, it was impossible not to feel like prey. She breathed deeply again, grounding herself. The keepers huddled closer to each other. In contrast, the semi-transparent young men burst into raucous laughter. One of them, dressed in a hoodie depicting a snarling orange bear, growled back at the shadow of the large cat pacing in front of the cowering lion. The black jaguar growled even louder than before. The lion, the only creature alive inside the enclosure, shrank backward from the shadows like a kitten. making itself small. The jaguar seemed to be half the size of the lion, lean and lithe, but his coloration made him flicker in and out of the darkness. His skull looked powerful and over-muscled, with a predator's jaw capable of crushing a skull like a walnut shell. His lengthy tail thrashed, whip-like. The shadowy echoes of the men slouched over to the jaguar's enclosure. On the far side of the moat that separated them, the black cat paced across the grassy area from one wall to the other, wheeled and trotted back the way he'd come, as if he was measuring the distance. One young man roared at him again. He was bigger than the others, broader in the chest, as if he lifted weights. Alandra judged him to be 22 or 3, slightly older than the others, and therefore had to act tougher. The jaguar halted, staring at the invaders with eyes like glowing jade. "Oh shit, Walker," someone said. "You made it mad." "Fuck it, which of us is in the cage?" One of the keepers said, "I can't watch this." Alandra's attention was yanked from the haunting to the knot of zoo staff clustered outside the enclosure's thick plate glass wall. She wondered if any of them had watched this event play out before. How many had heard the stories but hadn't believed it would happen again? As she regarded the zoo staff, wondering if she should say something to reassure them, the keeper who'd spoken up strode off into the deepening night. A moment later, a pair of women jogged after him. Trapped in the replay of events from 3 years ago and oblivious to the interruption, one of the young men drank deeply from a tall can of beer. The jaguar roared again. The man flinched, spilling beer down his orange sweatshirt. His friends laughed at him. Things might have gone differently if his manhood hadn't been insulted. Without a moment's consideration, he hurled the beer can. It passed through the bulletproof glass as if the barrier wasn't there, as it had not been on that fateful night. The beer can crossed the moat and struck the jaguar's shoulder. It foamed over, spewing a puddle at his feet. As if he sensed what was coming, the youngest member of the transparent quartet said, "Fuck this." He ran through Alandra. She shivered at his touch. His specter passed through rather than among the remaining knot of keepers, picking up speed as he sprinted toward the zoo's front gate. The zoo had gone silent except for the echo of his retreating footfalls. One of the keepers unlimbered a tranquilizer rifle. He held it to his chest in both white-knuckled hands. Alandra wondered what good he thought it would do against the ghosts. Maybe the gun was his security blanket. Maybe he wished he'd been there 3 years ago and could have prevented what happened. A spectral young man's voice shook with adrenaline when he asked, "Where'd the panther go?" The ghostly men shoved each other, shouting that someone had to go to the enclosure's edge. Someone had to look for the jaguar. Before anyone could gather the courage, the jaguar's paws grasped the top of the moat's wall. He hauled himself up silently. Clenched in his teeth was the crumpled beer can. One of the men straight up screamed. 2 of them panicked and bolted in the wrong direction toward the back of the zoo where there was no exit to the street. The third froze in place, a rabbit before the jade-green gaze of the big black cat. The beer can dropped from the cat's jaws, clattering as it landed. Alandra ready to spell in her fingers, preparing to protect herself and the remaining zoo staff. Instead, the jaguar's gaze slid over her without seeing her. The zookeeper fired his tranquilizer dart, but it passed through the cat without drawing his notice. Instead, the cat sprang after the runners. He caught the hindmost man and rode his back to the ground. He seized his victim's skull in his mouth. The crunch of skull that followed made Alandra's heart stutter. The noise was enough to galvanize the frozen man into a sprint. Either his whimpering or the motion caught the jaguar's attention. He abandoned his first victim and went back on the hunt. The cat took the second man down by sweeping his legs from under him with one razor-tipped paw. The man twisted as he fell, flailing, unable to coordinate a defense. The jaguar roared into his face, and he fainted. The cat swiped at him, shoving his limp head back and forth with his claws. He tore his cheek open to the bone, but got no response. Without a challenge, the jaguar lost interest. He rose from the prone man, stretched leisurely, and loped off after his final victim. Give you a minute to think about that. When the screaming finally blessedly stopped, Dana told Alondra, "This happens every year on the anniversary of Balaam's escape." Alondra nodded for her to continue. Dana wiped the tears from her face and drew a shaky breath. "They aren't ghosts. Brad, the kid that escaped before Balaam attacked, is still alive. I mean, you saw him leave and heard him running away. He's alive to this day. And Henry, well, he's alive too, severely disfigured, and he lost an eye. He'll never recover, but he survived." This is a residual haunting, Alondra explained. When something traumatic happens, sometimes the emotions can imprint on the surroundings, like a recording on an old-fashioned tape. Those hauntings play back under a variety of conditions. "How can we stop it?" an older man demanded. "This is Christopher Matthews, our general manager," Dana explained. "We tried an exorcism last year," Matthews said. "Father Gabriel came down from St. Mary's. Nothing changed." "There's no one to exorcise," Alondra said. "There are no spirits, no ghosts, just emotions." "So how can we erase the tape?" Dana asked. "When it happens in a house, sometimes the residual haunting can be cleaned by remodeling, by moving the walls or replacing the staircase. Wherever the haunting occurs must be radically changed," Alondra said. "We've already renovated Balaam's enclosure," Matthews protested. "Did you remove all the plants, all the dirt, all the stone?" When no one responded, she knew the answer was no. That would be a start, since the majority of events take place out here, outside the enclosure, the terrace needs to be altered too. I wouldn't guarantee that will clear things, though. That night was so traumatic, and not so long ago. The haunting hasn't degraded at all. Nothing, not even the jaguar's eyes or the beer can, have lost any color. Off across the zoo, the howler monkeys began to hoot at each other, building in volume before tapering back to silence. The peacock screeched again. "What do you suggest we do?" Matthews demanded. "The neighbors hear screaming every year. People always call the police to report it. The city is threatening a noise abatement lawsuit until we get it under control." Balaam was an Amazonian jaguar, right? "Yes, but he was bred and born in the US at the San Diego Zoo." "It doesn't matter." Alondra fished her phone out of her jacket's heart pocket and opened to the recording she had queued. A Mayan chant filled the silence. She let the recording play until Matthews shifted in irritation. "That's Roberto Cocom," Alondra said. "He's a shaman who lives in Miami. You could try playing his recordings on a loop every night from sunset to sunrise. His prayer may be sufficient to change the vibration here. Of course, you'll want to contact him, tell him what you're doing, and find out what kind of licensing fee he'd like." "He a friend of yours, then?" Matthews snapped. "We haven't met." Alondra looked up at the general manager. "It's okay that you're upset by this," she said. "Watching those young men die is awful." "Upset?" Matthews repeated. "What upsets me is all this mumbo jumbo. Father Gabriel shouted himself hoarse, and it made absolutely no difference." "And then he suggested you call me," Alondra said calmly. "I doubt he'd consider us friends." She gazed at the man, waiting for an apology she knew wouldn't come. "He said you could fix it." "I've told you how." Matthews stepped closer, looming over her. Alondra did nothing until he grabbed her arm. Then she released the protection spell she'd prepared earlier. An explosion of white light flung him backwards onto the recycled plastic surface of the terrace. "You're assuming that because you paid me to consult on your haunting, I owe you anything more than my expertise, Mr. Matthews. I don't appreciate being threatened, menaced, or bullied. I'm not a charlatan, and I've given you my recommendation, but you're not obligated to institute my suggestions. What you choose to do does not make my time any less valuable." Matthew scrambled to his feet, shaking the hand that had touched her as if it had been burned. Behind him, Dana stifled a smirk. I could sit and meditate here for the next year and see if I can alter the atmosphere enough to create to erase the residual haunting. But I don't think that either of us would be happy with my being tied here, Alandra told him. I believe you'll get more satisfying results if you bring in someone with a hereditary connection to Balaam's place of genetic origin. Of course, if you don't want to put your faith on my advice, go over Father Gabriel's head and bring in another exorcist. I'm sure the city and the neighbors will wait while you explore all your options. Matthews had enough sense to act chastened, even if he didn't apologize. You said that you think the shaman might be able to help. When it comes to something like this, there are no guarantees, Alandra said, other than if you do nothing, the haunting will repeat next year, and the year after that, and the year after that. Closing the zoo will not make it stop. Building apartments here will not make it stop. There are still Roman legions marching through York, or, for that matter, Civil War skirmishes still being fought at Gettysburg. Alandra scrolled through the numbers on her phone. She held it out so Dana could copy Cocombe's number into her own phone. I want you here next year, Matthews said. If this shaman doesn't fix it, I want you to disrupt it somehow. I can try. Something occurred to her. What happened to Balaam's body after the police shot him? Matthews turned to Dana, who said, the pelt and the skeleton went to the Field Museum in Chicago. Are they on display? I don't know. I don't think so. They went into their specimen types collection behind the scenes. Okay, if you can request them back, I can assemble a burial ritual that might drain some power from the haunting. If the jaguar spirit can reclaim its energy and rest, that might tilt the balance enough that the haunting will evaporate. I would start Cocombe's chant sooner rather than later, though. All right, Matthews said. Let's start there. I'll call the field curator and Cocombe in the morning. Flashlight beams crisscrossed the darkened zoo, drawing nearer. We're over here, Dana called. 4 armed and heavily armored police converged on them. Everything all right? One asked. Same old, Dana said. There were fewer calls this year. Either people are getting used to it or, Matthews coughed, or they know to be away from home on this night. We're still trying to fix it, Dana promised. One of the police raised the visor on his helmet. I see you finally called Alandra. Alandra smiled. It's been a while, Officer Kello. Everything still quiet? Thank you, yes. You vouch for her? Matthews asked. She cleared up some trouble in her locker room downtown. She'll fix your problem. Alandra was grateful for the vote of confidence. She just hoped she could live up to it. And then there's another double drop. Alandra set the shovel aside when the grave was about 2 feet deep and 3 feet long. It didn't need to be deep. Either this was going to work or it wasn't. But if she had to dig things up later, she didn't want to have to go down 6 feet. She arranged the turquoise pebbles in a starburst pattern. This wasn't the way a shaman would do it, but she was a witch and she had her own ways. She strewed herbs across the stones, bright yarrow and sharp-scented laurel and long sprigs of lavender. Then she lit the charcoal in her incense burner, blowing on it until the flame sunk in, and added 3 pearls of copal. She turned the shipping box at her feet over and rustled it open. She discovered inside that the jaguar's pelt was not entirely black. Alandra saw the hint of rosettes beneath the shadows. She stroked the fur and said, I'm sorry they taunted you. I'm sorry they insulted you. I'm sorry you were killed trying to protect your home. Alandra placed the pelt gently into the new dug grave. She tore a cardboard flap from the shipping box and used it to fan the smoke rising from her incense burner over the grave. The sweet, earthy scent reminded her of another predator she'd encountered far from his home and family. She hoped Jordan was at peace now. Sitting at the edge of the grave, Alandra unwrapped tissue from the jaguar's skull. His ivory fangs were as long as her fingers. With a shudder, she remembered the sound of the young man's skull being crushed in those teeth. She took a deep breath, shook herself. From her messenger bag, Alandra took a large round stone as big as her fist and blacker than the jaguar's pelt. She fit the jet orb into the skull's mouth. She set the skull on her knee as she sorted out the red embroidery floss, then wound the floss in a web that would hold the jaw shut. Excuse me. Finally, she turned the skull over in her hands and placed it upside down in the grave. She repeated the layer of herbs, then cast salt gathered from Bolivia across it all. Then she picked up a shovel and filled in the hole. Be free now, she said. Be free. She repeated it until the sun was gone from the sky and the lions in the enclosures on either side of her began to roar their bedtime ritual. The last step was to shove the grave marker into place. Using the shovel's handle as a lever, she rolled an unevenly shaped boulder atop the grave. Matthews told her that they were going to put a pair of fishing cats in here next. They would not be strong enough to uncover the grave. When Alondra had finished the burial, Dana waited outside the enclosure with a bottle of Chilean Carmenere and 2 coffee mugs. I thought you could use a drink. Thank you. Alondra brushed off her hands and sat on the stone bench that faced the big cat's enclosure. After the lions settled down, she heard the low chanting of Cacombe's prayer, played on a loop every night from closing time until dawn. Will it work? Dana asked as she poured Alondra a hefty mugful. I think so, Alondra said. She sipped the wine. She supposed they would find out for certain on the anniversary of Balaam's escape. Thank you.
Loren, that was lovely.
Thank you.
Been talking in the chat about how, it seems like sort of a mystery private eye job type of thing at first, and it is, but there's more to it than that too.
It's the whole occult detective thing.
Yeah.
Oh, and I should.
Well, oh, it's such a pretty cover.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah, that's really neat. I just love that that it was really about respect for the animal,
Yeah.
and respect for the cultures. So that was
I have complicated feelings about zoos, but I do think that respect should underlie everything else.
agreed. Yeah, and there are definitely a lot of different thoughts about zoos, many of which I'm capable of holding simultaneously.
Yeah.
So yeah, I get you on that.
But I'm
and
glad that
museums too.
Rhiannon and I both managed to work graves into our stories.
I know.
Yeah.
I was just thinking we had a wonderful theme.
Yeah.
Totally
Mhm.
accidental.
It's the best thing about Story Hour is there's always some kind of theme,
Yeah.
Mhm.
inadvertent.
Always, it seems.
Yeah, it
Oh,
just sort of
wonderful.
emerges from the stories.
The creative thread.
Yeah.
Mhm. I love that. And that's just one of the reasons I keep coming back every week. Actually, next week, Daniel's going to be soloing. I will not be here. But, what a week to miss, too. Gosh, I mean, the readers are going to be Justin C. Key and the legendary Pat Murphy. So if you, like me, cannot be there live, you're going to want to catch it on YouTube later. Man, what a one to miss. And it is a good idea to check storyhour2020.com the day of a reading, see if there are any changes. And it's also a good place to look and see who's on the schedule next and what you might have missed in the past. And you can click through and watch story hours from days of yore, back to almost 6 years ago. Gosh, what a night, Daniel.
Seriously.
The stories are so different, but that thread is still there.
Mm-hmm.
And thank you both. Rhiannon Rasmussen, Loren Rhoads, thank you both very much. I hope you'll both come read for us again. And
It's a pleasure. Thanks so much for having us.
Yeah, huge pleasure.
always a
Thank
pleasure.
you.
We have been too long without that pleasure, Loren. And thank you also to SIFWA, who gives us the grant that helps us keep the video streaming. Thank you to Daniel Marcus, without whom this Zoom room would be a cold, echoing, empty space. And thank you to all of you who are here now in the Zoom, all of you joining us at some point in the future. I just love that we all listen to these same stories, and so we all enjoy that exact same story hour.